Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and today got a little bit of crypto news, adoption sort of thing. Then I want to talk about the week ahead because there's a big earnings week, so I want to show you that sort of thing I'm looking at for the week ahead, a few charts, and that will be it today. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, sit back, relax, hit that like button, and let's get into this. You can now buy Bitcoin wallets at your local Best Buy store. Bitcoin is now going mainstream. It's becoming more mainstream by the day. I found another example of how Bitcoin mining is being used to stabilize power facilities. So this is nuclear energy with Bitcoin mining. Okay, a 2.5 gigawatt nuclear power facility in Pennsylvania is using Bitcoin mining to help balance the supply and demand of energy. So this is yet another example of how instead of wasting energy, that energy can be used to be redirected into Bitcoin mining to generate a profit, to secure the network, and more importantly, to stabilize the power grids. When there's an excess of energy, the energy can be directed to the Bitcoin miners, and when there is an increased demand for energy, the Bitcoin miners can be switched off, allowing the energy to flow to the places it is needed. Over in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, their minister has said crypto will play a major role in the UAE's global trade going forward. And it's not just the UAE. Crypto is going to play a major role all over the world. A new report shows 47% of millennials and 43% of Gen Z retirement accounts in the United States own Bitcoin and crypto. As the generations above these two slowly start to get older and retire, this will become the bulk of the investment demographic. Given that these two generations have been much more accustomed to technology, brought up around technology, the idea of having digital money, cryptocurrency, all of that is far more intuitive to these generations, and you can see that as it is reflected in their pension and retirement accounts. Again, this is another trend that I expect to see continue over time. I've been seeing a few rumors circulating on Twitter that the current move in Bitcoin, the current pump in Bitcoin price, is not spot driven. But the data here shows the complete opposite is true. The Bitcoin whales, which is an entity holding 1,000 Bitcoin or more, have accumulated around 70,000 Bitcoin over the past couple of weeks. So the black here is the price chart for Bitcoin, and the pink, as you can see, shows that the whales have been slowly but surely accumulating more and more Bitcoin. This is very much a spot-driven move, and this is exactly the sort of thing I like to see to give me confidence that this move is for real. We'll get to the charts in just a bit, but first of all, I want to show you the monthly closes ahead. Okay, we're only about a week away now from seeing the end of this month. The tide is turning. We are bouncing off of trendline support. We are looking for our first green monthly close in a long time. These are Heikin-Ashi candles, so they're slightly different to regular candles. But nonetheless, a close above about 19.5, and we will see the first flip to the green, indicating further upside for Bitcoin to come over the following months. So from Bitcoin and crypto to traditional finance, okay, this week is a big week because we have a massive amount of earnings coming out ahead of FOMC. You can see here, you can pause your screen if you want to go through and check all of these, but here is a list of all the companies and the dates at which they release. It's important to point out that together, Microsoft and Tesla make up nearly 9% of the entire S&P 500 by weight. So if these two companies can hit earnings, if they can even perform above expectation, we could expect this to validate a move to the upside in the S&P. And of course, the converse is true. If we get a big miss from Microsoft and Tesla, it's going to be quite difficult for the S&P to experience anything other than downside in the near term. Been a while since I've showed this melt-up chart, but I think we're going to get an answer this week. So again, if these companies, if we get a big earnings hit across the board, then I would expect to see this break out, start to validate this melt-up, and then move towards this 25 basis point hike, which we think is most probably already priced in at the coming FOMC in February. But of course, the converse is true. If you're a bear, if you think earnings are going to miss, if earnings do miss, then we are most probably going to get rejected at resistance here and start to move down. Then for me, the question becomes, do we end up still forming this basing structure? Do we still hold these lows here? And can we continue to look for a bottom in the S&P to form in the near future? Or are things about to get really ugly? Are we going to take out these lows and are we going to start to do something where we start to move down and form a deeper low even further below the prior lows set in October? So it's going to be a super interesting week. It's going to be really, really interesting to know whether we can finally say goodbye to this bear market, whether we can break out here and look for an actual melt up to unfold, or whether this is all going to have to be scratched off and we're going to be targeting new lows. The S&P 500 50-day moving average has crossed above the 150-day moving average for the first time in the current cycle. Historically, this is usually a signal of a new bull market. So you can see that here. With the price making this little bounce off here, this just so happens to be using the MAs as support after a golden cross. So it doesn't mean anything, because if earnings are bad, then this is just going to roll over, right? But this is a subtle hint. This is a subtle tell that the market is potentially looking to move higher. Another subtle hint or a subtle tell that the market is looking to move higher is the communications index fund. But what you can see is undeniably an accumulation period that we have just broken out of. This is going to be a long for me. I think we're going to get into the charts in just a moment, but this as well continues to hint at upside to come in the equity markets. The last 4 times the Nasdaq did this, it was lights out for the bear market correction and a new bull market formed. The Nasdaq high-low index is expressing a ravenous upside move, as you can see here. So in amongst a sea of bearish narratives and in amongst a whole host of reasons, a wall of worry for the markets to climb, we've got the Fed hiking into a slowing economy. We've got some of the tightest monetary conditions we've seen ever. We've got bearishness at all-time highs. We have got retail puts at all-time highs. But in the face of all of these things, there are subtle technical tells that tell us to be more open-minded towards an upside surprise here. As usual, I'm not predicting or calling anything. I'm simply waiting for the charts to tell me what to do. Further encouragement for me is JP Morgan is telling investors they should sell their stocks and take profits. Notice this is at the same time as Jamie Dimon has been talking about how Bitcoin was a scam, and that historically whenever he's come out and done this, it's come out at a later date that whilst he was flooding the market, they were some of the biggest underlying spot buyers of Bitcoin. So I can't help but wonder, is this the same trick? Do they start to come out and tell investors to sell Bitcoin and sell stocks right as they know we're about to experience a breakout that traps the retail on the wrong side? Gold and silver have finally started to receive mainstream media coverage. As you can see here, gold and silver boom predicted as the US hits debt ceiling and the dollar devalues. So usually, from experience, when you start to see headlines like this in the media, it means at least a short-term top is on the horizon. So on this channel, I've done a really good job of late. We bought this breakout here. We got long up to this high. I think I flipped short. Don't quote me on that. I can't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure we either sold the high and flipped short or just sold the high. I'm 90% sure I flipped short here and captured some of this move before flipping long again in this current open position. All of that was done in real time on this channel, and we have been riding this trend up ever since. Notice how here are the lows, okay? The lows are all the way down here, and only when we get almost to the complete top of this range, as you can see if I zoom out a bit here, only when we get within around $100 of the top of this range does the mainstream media start to pick up on this and start to call for bullishness from gold, start to talk about a boom in gold and silver. Anything is on the table, and I am hoping that we can get to my take profit target of around 2050, where I can look to exit this trade in the short term before reassessing and letting the market cool down. But if you have no exposure at this point, I would caution against jumping in right as the mainstream media are sounding the alarm bell for gold and silver. I would think most probably, whether we go up, down or sideways from here, I would think a shakeout is coming in the near future. So I'm happy to stick with this long, so long as it continues to trend. But this trend to me is nearing exhaustion. That doesn't mean I'm not still bullish on gold long term. I still think gold is going to get to 5 figures this decade. But just looking at this move, I would caution against jumping in here. Even if we do get some kind of big move up to the top of this range, I would then expect for this to turn around sharply and put in some kind of big correction before we can start to build off of that again. So for now, long and strong continue to push, but I am very, very cautious here. I don't want to say nervous, but I don't know another word to describe it. I'm starting to get the feeling that we are close to the end of this, of being able to push this trade comfortably. So I'm looking for a pullback to occur soon. I'm looking to hop out of this trade soon, but currently I still don't have any reason to do so. If I show you a silver chart, I kind of expect this, it would have broken out by now in my opinion. And if it does, if we get a breakout above the top of this box, I'm happy to buy that breakout. But as it stands at the moment, I kind of expect this to resolve down before going higher. Again, when the mainstream media starts to ring the alarm bell, I start to get a little bit concerned. The miners haven't really performed very well. Does that mean we're going to get an explosive move that then resolves down? Or does this mean this is going to end up being a not very profitable trade? I don't know at this point. But because I am so cautious about gold at the moment, naturally, I am also cautious about the miners. I think I will be looking for some sort of trend line breakdown to close this trade, and then I can reassess. We can draw another box like I did to enter this trade, or perhaps we could draw a diagonal trend line and buy the breakout of that, something like that, as and when it occurs. But for now, I'm proceeding with caution with the precious metals. Same is, of course, true of the junior miners. There is still hope for some upside left in these metals because the dollar continues to get crushed. I really was not expecting this. I've been saying this over and over again. I was expecting at least a counter trend bounce, if not a decent grind along this trend line before it breaks down. But this is just hot knifing this support. We're only a fraction of a percent away from setting a new low and opening up much lower numbers. So it'll be interesting to see what happens from the dollar. I think we've been overdue a counter trend rally for a while, but if this is just going to continue to be a powerful downtrend, then perhaps that can continue to catalyze the move in the metals. Haven't covered Geo in a while, but Geo is kind of doing what I'd expected it to do. It is indeed chopping around inside of this box. I'm looking for it to emerge, for it to break out above the top of this box, and then we can add a position. The stop loss has already been moved up to these lows here, so nothing much I can do apart from hope that this continues to grind up and then break out. And like I said, we'll add a position if those criteria can be met. ARK, the ARKK ETF, is made it back inside this box. So like I've been saying for a while, chop around and break out of this box, and that will be a long from me, one day at a time as ever. The bull of all bulls, Bitcoin, still kind of pressing up. I would think reasonably speaking, if I flip this onto log scale, you can see we have broken out of here. I would think some level of consolidation, at least at a minimum, is due here. I don't necessarily expect this just to keep going, although nothing would surprise me at this point. I also think it's important to point out, if I grab this here and show you the measurements, if we take this as the cycle low, we're currently on day 24 of an expected 60-day cycle. So usually in Bitcoin, you get a half cycle low show up around day 30. Given we're on day 24, 25 right now, it's perfectly reasonable to expect a pretty significant pullback to occur into a half cycle low around day 30, which would be into the end of this month. So I think regardless of what happens here, we're likely going to see some level of pullback into a half cycle low into the end of the month. And then I think we actually have a good chance at rallying up for a while after that. So anything's on the table now. Anything includes straight up from here and straight down from here, as well as sideways. As ever, one day at a time, long and strong, continue to push with Bitcoin. Ethereum starting to look a bit better, starting to make its way to the top of this cluster of highs, and I think if we can get a break above this sort of 1675 level, that should open up 1800 pretty quickly thereafter. XRP, not much to say about this. All the while we're above this red line, I'm happy to hold along and push the trade to see what the market can give. I won't tolerate us closing below this red line for more than a few days. If that's the case, we'll cut the trade and then just repeat the process as and when we break back above the red line. But for now, long and strong, continue to push. MATIC starting to work its way up again, so happy days there. I think it hasn't got to do much more from here. I think it's just a little bit higher, and then I think that will open up 1.2, 1.3 pretty quickly. Zcash still pushing this trade, as you can see, so not much more to say about that. Tesla, we got the earnings on Wednesday, as I said, so it'll be interesting for me to see what the chart does between now and then. Obviously, whatever happens on Wednesday is going to catalyze the price movement. I think if earnings are above expectations and they've sold more cars, then we'll likely see a move higher. If the inverse is true, we will likely have to pay a stop on this trade. I am purely a technical trader. I probably won't even look at the earnings, to be honest. The chart will tell me everything I need to know. So that's what I'm looking for here. Apple slowly working its way up to a potential long, so if we can get a breakout, retest, resumption or something similar, then that could be a long. That's just a trade idea. UKX, still pushing this trade, still hoping to see this resolve to the upside, but again, I guess it kind of depends a lot what the US equities do. For now, this seems to be a leader, so if it wants to lead, let it lead. The VIX still continues to be amusing to me, still cannot break out, still does not speak to bearishness, despite all of the bearish narrative out there. So this is the sort of thing you'd expect to see if the S&P 500 was going to put in new lows. Of course, that could happen and that can happen very quickly. But as it stands today, this hasn't happened yet. A breakout of here and I will put a hedge on to hedge my equity exposure. I'm super interested in the NASDAQ at the moment. If we can get a breakout of here, this has to be a long, and I think we can get quite a nice risk reward on this trade. I'll be keeping a close eye on this. If we do get a breakout of this downward sloping red resistance line, expect me to tell you I'm long. So I've been calling this out since all the way down here. And it looks like this week could be the time to start attacking. Of course, if you're a bear, you want to see this roll over, and you want to see this roll over quickly. And the S&P 500, again, still in no man's land all the while we're in here, but looking for a breakout. If we can get a breakout, that will also be a long from me. But we have to be open to seeing a rejection at resistance and a breakdown and a drop into the cycle low. Still not entirely sure which count is correct, whether it's the blue arrows or whether it's the green arrows. But we're getting pretty close to finding out. So if we get a drop down on bad earnings this week, then we can accept this blue count and remove the green count. Failure to do that, we start to emerge out of here and break out, then we know we can accept the green count and move on from there. I almost forgot XLC, as I showed you earlier on. This seems to be breaking out, so I think this has to be a long from me. We'll see what happens at the open. If it gaps up massively, then I might not chase it. I probably won't chase it, But if we can get in near the level that it's at now, or even preferably get a back test before going, I will be super interested in taking a long. The long will look something like this. So can it happen? Can't it happen? I don't know. Like I said, if it gaps up massively, then I'm not going to be chasing it up there, because the risk reward will just look a little unfavorable for my liking. So we'll see how this opens, but I like the structure here. This is clearly a base, and it's clearly emerging from that base. So this should lead to further upside for XLC. So I'll add this one to the watch list and see what happens at market open today. If you found value here today, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like on the video, subscribe if you're not already, and turn the notifications on if you want to continue to get updates for free on all my trades, new setups, trade ideas, and all of that good stuff. It's going to be a big week this week. I'm very interested in seeing how it unfolds. I hope you're doing well in life. In the meantime, take care from me. All the best. Cheers. Bye.